So the top question, as a fervent Opie and Anthony fan, why did you stop listening to the Jim and Sam show?
Sorry. So this question really kind of compares Opie and Anthony to Jim and Sam, and it kind of implies that they're so different that an O&A fan would stop listening to Jim and Sam. And to me, that's absolutely true. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there who will still kind of put up with it because it's something to put on the radio. It's kind of got a little bit of a taste of what they remember. There's like the nostalgia factor. I cannot imagine somebody finding this show, though, and like really, really, really getting into it. Anyone who would have liked O&A, I cannot imagine them getting into this. That type of person that liked that type of comedy, because it's so careful to me.
Yeah,
it's so the difference between O&A and Jim and Sam is like you could just tell that O&A just didn't care. They didn't care if they pissed their own listeners off. They didn't care if they pissed people who might go to their show or Jim's shows off. All they were doing was they were going in there and they were getting topics, and they were trying to find the most like dark, cruel, like fucked up thing to make each other laugh. And I remember Jim, especially, and a lot of people call it like his edgelord phase, but at the beginning of O&A, he had this kind of like, it's kind of corny now, but he would go in there and just try to be as ruthless as he possibly could. And I can't remember. I'm trying to think of like some examples, but all you gotta do is.
I was gonna say one example that I'm using in the documentary is perfect. You talking about that is because I could never imagine Jim getting his dick out and pissing in his friend's oatmeal now. Like,
oh yes, yep, that's a great example. Yeah, you there?
Yeah.
Cut out a little bit. Sorry. Yeah, that is a fucking great example. And even some of the rants and some of the ways that he shat on callers. I remember that there's a clip I uploaded. I don't know where it is or what it is. I think it was a Neil deGrasse Tyson call, and the guy was calling up saying like, you disrespected Neil deGrasse Tyson for using chip, and it was like, he's a smart, great man. And Jim really did shit on him. Like, it was kind of had that little bit of a taste of the old O&A, and this was on Jim and Sam. But I just still remember like the Dragon Wagon call, or some of the women that would call, and just the details with which Jim would go into their lives. And he's just imagining all this shit. Who knows if it's true or not? But just him painting the picture of these people, you just assume it's true just for the comedy, and it was just it was so good.
I think the only example that I've ever seen on the Jim and Sam show where it's kind of tapped into the old style was the Nancy Grace interview, and then they rode off that for a long time because that went viral. That interview went viral really badly, and then apparently, from what I've read a lot of these articles, and apparently how viral that went really boosted the profile of the guest that wanted to come on. It had a weird reaction where like bigger guests started to come in after that, and you could argue actually that probably opened the door for a little bit of the downfall of Jim and Sam, because they were getting serious people in that they couldn't act in the same way that they acted before.
Oh, that's really interesting. Wait, so bigger people wanted to come in for that, even though they really did like shit all over her, and they were.
I think it was basically like publicists probably saw how much coverage the Nancy Grace thing was getting, and they probably saw, this show's got heat. This show's, you want to be on this show and stuff.
Jesus, how fucking nasty are publicists? They're like, so they took one of the guests and just humiliated them.
Yeah, but they can twist humiliation really easily into money. Yep. Publicists can, and
absolutely right
and stuff. So yeah, I think
she appeared Yeah, she talked about on The View, remember?
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. You're right.
Because otherwise, what's Nancy Grace doing? Otherwise, she's just potting around, like promoting a book, and no one's really that engaged or whatever. And then suddenly she that happens, and then she's on doing all of the big morning shows, doing all of the big talk shows late at night, and then she's a thing. And then book sales and yada yada yada. Like to publicists, that's fucking. And then other publicists are seeing it, saying like, yeah, there's a chance you can go on this show and something might happen. Like, let's fucking get you in, kind of thing. So, I remember, I can't remember what it was now. The story, it was quite interesting. I was reading it, and yeah, they definitely alluded to the fact that the Nancy Grace thing went viral and sparked like a higher profile of guests coming in. But I think like as well, like I think the difference. I mean, you can say this as well in your own words, I guess. But like my feeling on it is the emphasis on fear, and I think. Beforehand, they had a profile that where they were basically like daring their bosses to fire them because they knew that their profile was big enough to survive. And now Jim and Sam live in fear of not having that gig.
Absolutely, and not only do they live in fear of like the bosses, they also seem to have this weird like insecurity or fear of each other. Almost as if they don't trust each other. Maybe it had to do with like the way Opie was kind of like scooted out the door, and the way that Jim. I think actually Jim did sort of. I forgot what he did. Where it was like he refused to do the afternoon. He said he wants mornings, but he wants to be on a different channel. And then they said no. Like obviously, the person that was still holding you on A Crowd, they know this. Like the execs did. It was Jim. So they said, no, we want you on the whatever, the Faction Talk, what it was called, the Opie Radio. And they said, you can have the morning. But he said, like, I don't want to be with him there. Now, that's where Opie got this whole idea of, like, backstabbing and all that. There was other factors, though. And if you listen to there's that Jim and say, I had, not to even promote the thing, but I have it in a playlist, that whole September 2016, I think, drama where Opie's learning that he's not going to have the morning anymore. Like, it's a guarantee, and the executives signed off on that.
I think I used your video quite a bit, actually, on for that segment, because I do cover that segment in a lot of detail.
Oh, nice. Perfect, yeah. So there was other reasons that Jim did that, and there was something that Opie kind of did that made it so that Jim wasn't completely a backstabber. So I guess see how that's my thought. We're on question number 1.
Yeah, let's get to number 2 now.
Hold on, hang on. I had something to go.
Yeah, go with it.
Yeah. The fear. That's right. So this whole thing with Opie getting kicked off, Jim and Sam are now together, and it's just this weird atmosphere. Is like it's almost like a guy just got killed, and both guys are like, "I didn't do it, man. Like I did not kill him, and you didn't kill him. So like neither of us have anything to worry about, right?" But they obviously there's something weird about the trust, because remember they switched seats. Jim goes over and sits in the host chair, and now Jim's opening the show. Sam's over there, and you can see Sam's kind of, for a while, he's playing up the, hey, I'm happy to be here. Like, they're making jokes about it and stuff. And it just didn't, I just could feel like they both, well, Jim, I think, felt fine sitting in that chair, and Sam felt like he was like, what's going on with me now? Like, am I the next guy out the door? Obviously, he never alluded to anything like that, but I really think in terms of what Jim was doing, he was making a strategy where he gets to sit in the host. He becomes the host. He becomes the center of the show, so that as it develops and as it grows, it's all growing around Jim, with Sam as this side guy. Because if Jim was that side guy, and it's kind of growing around Sam sort of thing, well, there's a lot of people they can still pull in. Now it's not Opie Radio anymore. It's Faction Talk. It's on the entertainment section. So the executives are kind of going for a whole different vibe with it.
Yeah,
and Jim, obviously, Yeah, right. And they fell into place, as we can tell, like when we get to the question about the guests. They fell into place and they played ball for them. But I think Jim also realized at that point that it's not necessarily being held on to so much as it for O&A and for wanting the O&A vibe. All they really want is to kind of like pull the O&A audience in with the names, keep them on that subscription list, like make enough money as they can off them. But imagine if it had grown all around Sam. Who could they put in there? Like, there's tons of people. It
Oh,
wouldn't even,
definitely.
yeah, it wouldn't even really matter. Like, put a wrestler in there. Put a young comedian who they can pay like 1/5 of what they're paying Jim. So Jim switches it up, and I think at that moment, that's when all of a sudden that like cohesion, like, okay, man, we are in this together. Like, we got rid of the bad person who made you go work nights and fucked your marriage up a little bit, and we got rid of the guy who was like fucking your mornings up and trying to kind of get you booted and all. That's what it was, by the way.
Yeah.
He was trying to get Jim booted. That's what it was.
No, definitely.
Remember Opie used to pull in all these comedians every single day.
Yeah.
And Jim commented on that
did.
after he was gone.
No,
It
he
was
did.
like
And he
yeah.
like had this resentment for Opie's comics a little bit, and yeah, I was listening to the exact clip you're talking about. I'm trying to remember like exactly what he said, but he definitely brought it up as a negative, and it was kind of shocking because I was like, dude, they're like fellow comedians, and he kind of he was targeting hate like at Opie and stuff, but he was alluding to the fact that like he's trying to replace me with these other comedians, and he said he wanted me to maybe only do 3 days a week and stuff. And so I think he sounded like he had this resentment towards like Sherrod and Vic and that.
Yeah, and I think in his head he does know that like they're a comedian and they're gonna get a seat on a show just because it's some host drama, and they're gonna take it and they're gonna take their licks and see Jim at the Comedy Cellar kind of pissed and resentful. And they're just gonna take it. They got the money now.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So it's like he can't totally blame them, but I think they just kind of felt this whole atmosphere of that, and once they had turned it in on each other, that seat switch, tried to do it as if it meant nothing, but both of them knew. And I think that's when the whole something happened at that point where everything started to transform. They started to care. They started to get insecure, and they started to let those insecurities kind of like lead through the air. Sam started to change a little bit into this guy who he doesn't like. What was he trying to be? Was he also trying to be funny? He clearly wasn't Sam Roberts that I remember from O&A.
No.
Kind of was trying to like tag Jim's jokes with more jokes, and he was trying to insert himself into it in a way where it's like, hey, I'm not just like this side guy sort of person who sets somebody up. Yeah, and I think for him, the reason he did that is because he's sitting on this side chair over there, and now all of a sudden, like, it's a physical feeling of like, okay, I'm just tagging. I mean, they're just tagging along, and I'm just setting this guy up, and anyone can do that. Any monkey can just throw a line out there and be a straight man. But I guess I have to start becoming like a bigger part of the show and a bigger part of the comedy. It just created this weird mess, and you almost can't notice it. If you were a brand new listener, you would not be able to notice it whatsoever. No.
But there is this like
the context,
underlining like unspoken panic, and
yes,
that's really amplified actually. And there's a recent episode of the Jim and Sam show where Jim's talking about his contract, and he's saying that it's not going well, and that he might think about joining a subscription-based service. And the panic in Sam, he's like, what? Why? Like, we're doing good radio. Like he's clearly panicked, and he in Sam's head he's like, you better fucking sign, because if you don't sign, I am out. Like I'm either back at nights or like this more. I'm taking a pay cut. This morning thing, forget about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's like I said, it's this underlining panic in both of those. It's unspoken. That's just like this horrible, awkward energy there that just lies on the surface somewhere.
Absolutely. and that kind of brings us a little bit to question number 2, or at least my answer for question number.
How would you improve the Jim and Sam show?
I don't think there is any sort of outside factor or source or anything that an outside force can put into that can actually change it, because that recipe of the contract and the executives, what's my role on the show and what's mine, that's all like just inevitably going to be there. And the way that they have handled that, especially Jim, by kind of doing this weird seat change over and over again, it really has like solidified it. I think they kind of feel alone together, but they would never actually say that. At the beginning in September, they were in this together, like side by side, taking shit from Opie every day, both of them, and it sort of brought them closer. But then all of a sudden, it was like each person's in their own race now, and because of that, I think everything got fucked up. You could. This question kind of leads. I mean, you sent me some of these other questions.
Yeah.
It kind of leads into some of them, but especially the Sam Roberts as being a good fit. That you could tell these guys what they need to do. I just think, like what we talked about, that whole insecurity, it would drag them away from being able to just constantly do it. Like Sam,
an addition, a third mic could help, maybe, or.
It could possibly help if the result of it was to force them into their roles and for them to be happy about it. Because I think the biggest exposing factor of the show, the way that you can see this insecurity the most is the interviews. Because the interviews are always done different. Like, sometimes Jim is asking all the questions, sometimes Sam's asking all the questions, and it just doesn't seem to like it. All right, so when Sam does the questions, Sam is great to just ask regular old questions and be Sam. He shouldn't be trying to be funny. He shouldn't be doing any of that. When Jim is the question asker, Jim is panicky. He sounds like he's scared to ask every question he asks. He sounds like he's insecure about, like, is this a dumb question? I think a lot of the times he asks really stupid questions. Yeah. And by him, just by, like, the factor of him being the one to ask the question alone, it kind of takes away his ability to throw the joke out at the answer. And another thing is, like, speaking of interviews, the whole idea that they're doing interviews. It's. Do you remember, like, the old O&A, where somebody would come in, and you would absolutely expect an interview to be done. You would expect. Hold on. Cut. And you would absolutely expect an interview to not be done at all.
Yeah.
It'd be with somebody who, like, let's say, like, Willem Dafoe. Now, you can hear Willem Dafoe get interviewed and ask the same exact questions over and over again on every press run. It was just this stiff question, answer, comment, question, and it's just this formula. O&A, I think the reason a lot of people loved it was because you could go and find that guy who you've always just seen being interviewed, and he was kind of forced in a weird way to just sit down, like almost at a bar, and have a conversation with fucking Patrice O'Neal. It's like they brought something out of these, like, boring celebrities that you just could not find even on Stern. You couldn't find it anywhere else because they just said, fuck asking this guy questions. Let's just see if he can hang out with us. Let's see if he can fit in.
I think the reason for that, just to say, I think that with O&A, the people that came in, like, they were having fun already. They were in an environment where everyone was. They were like the interviews that came in, the people that came in. they didn't need them there to continue their, the people that came in usually came into an existing conversation taking place, or usually came into the show already have the dynamic of the show already been there. When Jim and Sam are there, like when they're doing their like their hour of like conversation at the beginning of each show, it's forced, it's panicky. There's no real cohesion between the two, and it looks like they're just begging for someone to come in just as a distraction for them.
Oh, the first hour. You mean like the current events hour?
Yeah.
I could go on and on about that. Oh, that used to be something like I would fucking write blocks of text that probably like 2-3 people read on Reddit like regularly. That first hour, they would do it always had to be Trump. Let's bring Trump up. And now here's the thing. Everyone that listens to O&A, or I'm sorry, Jim and Sam, they are going to Jim and Sam for laughing, for something light, for them to take a concept or a topic or whatever that's being talked about in the news and to find the funny in it, in that really dark, nasty way where it doesn't even have to take a side. It's almost as if now, like, they feel obligated to take a side, and because they don't really want to take either side, it's just this messy, uncohesive, like Jim, for example, let's say like Trump, that you'll hear like a Trump topic. Trump said this at this speech. Now Sam starts sarcastically kind of making fun of it as that's his sort of Trump repeated bit. But Jim, he's sitting there and he's like, all right, well, a good portion of my fans are these truckers and these blue-collar dudes and these just people who are obviously pro-Trump. They don't want to hear yet another, like, MSNBC Daily Show style take. And then
Exactly.
his other side is, like, people who love, like, Comedy Central and, like, some trannies and people who are involved in, like, the adult industry and or just follow the adult industry, because he was kind of pretty big in that. Some people who love like metal and stuff like that. So that's his like left wing side. They don't want to hear him go into like fuck whoever's Trump's talking about, like he's absolutely right, I fucking love this guy, he's fun. They don't want to hear that. That's what the truckers want to hear, and the truckers don't want to hear the MSNBC thing. So you just hear Jim in real time. It's a wonderful thing to listen to, just not for actually being entertained or laughing or anything. You can hear him work a point out, figure out some way to handle this Trump story that is balancing enough so that the truckers don't get mad and the porn industry fans don't get mad, or you know what I mean, the left wing
Definitely.
and the right wing of his fan base don't get mad, and what you're left with is just a bland, boring, say nothing, useless take. Like it's not funny, it's not dangerous, it's not really interesting. It's just like it's I don't even know the right word for it. It's basically just vanilla, I guess. It's vanilla.
Yeah.
And now you
really
you take that concept, and then you take the fact that they talk about Trump, it seems like, or just some political thing, every single morning, and they try to use it to fill as much time as possible. And you just kind of get some of the worst first hour of radio of all time. And I actually, like, I was looking back, because like I said, I used to write all kinds of like things on this, and again, I'm like really out of the loop here with O&A or Jim and Sam. I haven't even listened in quite a long time to a full show, probably over a year. So I was looking back. Yeah, and I was looking back just to see the kind of things that I was writing when I was listening to it, and I had this one post where I had listened to Stern that morning, and I had listened to Jim and Sam, and they both talked about the same topic. I didn't write what the topic was in the post, so it had something to do with Trump or something to do with politics. And I noticed that even on Stern, even in his old Hollywood Stern, just whatever that woman's name is that everyone hates, Marcy Turk, inspired show, he took this angle of talking about the event, and then imagining who in his life or who around the office would be the one to do something like that. And so all of a sudden, you take a hot button political topic and you bring it into something that's relatable, really has nothing to do with politics at all, and you kind of make fun of and roast people like the intern or the staff and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was funny. It was entertaining. It was like you completely forgot about the fact that Stern never even told you what his opinion was. Now, Jim and Sam, on the same topic, had to make sure that they got the left wing point out and the right wing point out. And they wanted to pontificate. What should we do? Like, we want to see both sides. They kept saying that kind of thing. Or like, we want to see both sides. Like, call in, let us know. But it's like, guys, you don't need to do that. Like, you don't. You hear a point, and their first reaction is just to go and have to balance it, and to forcefully talk about what political opinions should come of this event. It's like you've completely missed the boat. You missed the whole lane that you were meant to take, and the style that O&A used to do was very similar. Like, I mean, obviously Anthony's going to go off on this or that, but with somebody like Patrice or Colin or Bill Burr, they'll be in there and they'll call Anthony out with something in his personal life. Then all of a sudden now it switches to, Anthony's guns and Anthony's personal life. And again, like, you forget about the topic, but Jim and Sam just panicked. They just fucking
It's like
they have to go into it.
It's like they're filibustering their own show, and it's like they're trying to, as they're talking to, while simultaneously thinking about whether or not they're hitting the left and the right points. It's like they're always trying to get somewhere with their point, but they're just not. They're just basically, like you said, just ticking off each, as they're talking, all their brain is doing is ticking off each of the boxes of on both sides of like, did I address these guys' point, did I address these guys' point? And it's like you said, like, even like old O&A, even though you had the Anthony thing and you knew where he stood, with at least he's principled and at least he's got something to say, even if what he's got to say is the same as every other. Like, Compound Media, like when he's on Compound Media, he's like that to the extreme, and that's why that's and it's so one-sided and so myopic that's why that turns people off. But the old style of O&A, it had the perfect mix of like someone that had a really like specific opinion on something, and then you had other people that came in. Bill Burr and Patrice come to mind as like good examples of the guys that would come in who are completely polar opposite, and you get conversation, you get this kind of like energy, you get this compound. It's like I would say what's that? So let's say like Anthony's like potassium, and like Patrice and Bill Burr, they're like water, and then Jim and Sam are like a non-reactive element. They're just like completely non-reactive. So Anthony, when he's potassium on his own and he's not surrounded by water, it's just, there's nothing there. So that's why when Anthony's doing his show, he's just potassium sitting by itself. But when he's brought in with water, this explosions, like things start happening. But Jim and Sam, they're like the least, whatever the fucking least reactive element is in the fucking table. They're just sitting there offering absolutely nothing, and you could bring in any other element, and it's just like non-reactive whatsoever. Like, it's just that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, they have a gut instinct to need to give some kind of take or opinion, like directly on the event or on the political issue at hand, but they have completely missed the opportunity there. And also, I mean, we're in 2018, everybody has YouTube. If I want to hear political takes, I want to hear political debates, I'm going to go specifically to somebody who has learned and read their whole life and built this big reputation on creating content that involves political opinions. But Jim and Sam, day after day, for that first hour, it's like they just feel like they need to give their opinion, and then they feel like they need to, because they're self-conscious as they're saying their opinion, they need to say, oh, well, I know, and the other side thinks this and all that. It's like, and yeah, they got a point about this. Like, guys, shut up. Like, this is not what you were ever supposed to do.
how would you go about on like correct it? Like if you could offer them advice, how would you like try and I
I
mean,
would
is
say
there
like
advice for that even?
I think it's kind of hard because you do have to be kind of creative. But once they were to get into the habit of not going straight to that need to put an opinion out or give an actual take, like Stern did with the angle of talking about who could be the one to do it around the office, or who would say if Sal Governale was president, like what do you think he would do with the wall, or what do you think Richard Christie would do with the wall? Like that has so much room to just like make fun of Richard and Sal. And then you get Richard and Sal coming in like I wouldn't do that. Like and then you get those two fighting. It's like now you've created something that's funny and that gets everyone's mind. That's what people come to your show for, Jim and Sam. They come there to get their mind off that shit. Hear just some funny stuff for a little while. It's the morning. They have gotten it in their head that when you read one of those stories, now we need to say what everyone out there's political opinion is and what we think is the right one or why we can understand both sides. It's just like they've just missed the point.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. How would you improve Jim and Sam? I think we covered that. So yeah, does the current guest selection positively or negatively impact the show's quality, and if so, why?
I think yes, extremely. Again, like goes back to that whole thing about how O&A would take somebody.
Sorry, is that extremely? Because the question is like, does the current guest selection positively or negatively impact the show's quality, and why?
Oh, it I would say that it impacts it negatively, but it's also a fault of theirs in a way. Whereas, let's say Opie and Anthony, Patrice, Bill Burr, Colin, Bob Kelly, let's say they had the exact same guest list. Like day after day. The show exists in 2018. Patrice is alive. Hey, like all that stuff is in place. And you take the exact same guest list Jim and Sam have worked with, you would get so many people who are some of the most boring interviews of all time on Jim and Sam. You'd get enjoyable radio segments that maybe you're not going to listen to it again. Like maybe it's not that good, but it's something that when you hear it, you might pull up the video and you see a giant like ratio to the dislikes simply because they would not do an interview. That was the best, most special value thing about O&A is that they would take somebody who's coming in for an interview and do everything but an interview. They'd have their whole little like material list and they do weird news stories or like they'd show a YouTube video to fucking William Shatner like about some like grotesque weird thing where a guy's like trying on girls' underwear in public or something. They would just get something out of these people who are normally so fucking boring and nobody wants to hear about what the actor thinks of the movie he did and like what it was like on set. But then you got fucking Jim who's celebrity obsessed and he's gotta ask what was it like to work with De Niro. He's asking questions for himself, really. He's just kind of said fuck the audience, like I want this opportunity. He's getting selfish with it. And he's kind of forgetting that we all came to that show, or we all stuck around. We didn't change the channel when one of these awful actors comes in because we knew that they were going to do something with that person that you just couldn't hear anywhere else. And they've completely forgotten that. They lose my attention span. They just... you want to know what's funny, too?
Yeah.
When it was 2016 or so, and when Jim and Sam were having these people in, remember there was an interview with Bill Burr. Literally, by the way. Literally an interview. Jim interviewed Bill Burr as if he was like a traveling celebrity. That same week, I think it was, maybe it was the week before, Opie had Bill Burr in with like 4 other comedians. Of course, it's fucking yeah, like all those douchebags. Opie's segment with Bill Burr, I will pose it to you here and stand by it, was better to listen to.
Oh, I agree.
Funnier and just more O&A like than Jim and Sam's. Can you believe Bill Burr coming in, and he comes in like once a year or so, and like that's like an old school name, even if he's all political or Naya Burr, all that shit. It doesn't matter. Like, he's still funny as fuck, and that's an O&A legacy guy.
Dude, I'll give you another one.
And they interviewed him. Yeah.
Artie Lang. Artie went on, and this might. Yeah. He went on OP, and I think he went on with what's the other guy? Wow, what's his name? Played the parrot in Aladdin.
Fuck.
I just blanked his name. Like,
holy shit, what the hell is his name?
Wow.
Holy fuck, dude.
Dude, this is like I could pick.
He's got
name.
like a weird name. What's his name?
Gilbert Gottfried.
There you go. Jesus Christ.
I don't know what the fuck happened there. But yeah, so he was in on the OP show with Gilbert Gottfried, and I think there was a couple of the OP comics in there as well. And he also did a show with Jim like that week. With I think Voss was in there as well. So on paper, like, it's OP, Gilbert Gottfried, and Artie Lang with maybe like I think like either Chris Stefano or like Sherrod or someone like that. Versus Jim, Sam, Rich Voss, and Artie. And like, dude, the OP one was fucking hilarious. It was the one where they were doing the Beatles nigger thing, which was like kind of really funny. And then he did the Jim Norton one, and it, like you said, it was an interview. It was basically a let's talk about addiction interview. It was the most boring radio I might have ever fucking listened to. It was dreadful, and it had like fucking Voss in and Artie and Jim. Like that should never have been. That should never have gone the way that it did. But like OP's value, like, I know the sub's ironically turning pro OP and stuff, but there's always been one fucking thing that he's been completely consistent with, and it's the fact that he doesn't put up with the shit that Jim brings to the show, the fucking porn shit, all that gay shit. Like, he's like, I don't know, man. Like, he at least understands radio a little.
It's really weird. It's like it's baffling, to be honest, but it's so strange to me that it's like, did Jim want to just do these fucking interviews all along? I really feel like his obsession with celebrities has been the main factor in what brings this on. He wants to ask celebrities about other celebrities. He wants to he wants to like get info out of them that has to do with like the type of weird, sort of intrusive fascination he has into their lives. And he has just totally missed the whole like O&A factor that somehow Opie gets. I don't know how, but that Opie still has that idea in his head, and it's so sad that out of everyone who so Jim's off playing like football, Anthony's off playing like fucking croquet, and Opie's still playing baseball. But it's like Jim and Ant are like the best baseball players that ever fucking lived, but they just want to play croquet. And
that's a good
example.
That's
so
a good
sad.
idea.
It's like Michael Jordan playing baseball. Like, dude, good God.
And it's like they were all part of like the same fucking base. They were part of the fucking Red Sox all together. Now fucking Ant's off playing with like a second string team, like in a completely different sport. Jim's playing amateur fucking volleyball somewhere, and Opie's still at the Red Sox, but now he doesn't have the best players there anymore.
yeah, and not to mention, to keep going with this analogy, Opie was the pitcher. What was Jim? What was Anthony? The catcher. Jim was like the first base. Yeah, but like Jim like just really, really, really wants to play like outfield, and he sucks at it. He drops every fucking ball. Like, he's not good, but he just demands that he plays outfield, and he got a contract that says he could. We took that analogy too far.
Yeah, I was going to bring Sam off the bench as well as a batter and not being able to hit a ball, but that's going way too far.
Right. But people, like, if that was in that thing, then people get it. Like, it really is sad that Opie is the only one trying to do a comedy hang.
Yeah, that's 100% is what it is. I think it's pretty much objectively true that most people enjoyed O&A for the comedy hang. It's the fundamental element to the show working, and it seems that Jim and Sam, I don't know Jim as much. I think Jim still likes to hang around with those types of people, but I think also Jim likes being the one funny guy in the room, and I think that he doesn't like to be watered down with other comedians in there too often. And I think they're so obsessed with doing their own thing away from it. They're so obsessed with like not being like they want to be something different to what O&A was, and I think that was the big example of that is where they're talking about I can't remember who it was Sam was talking about, but where it's like saying that a wrestler's more interesting to have in than Colin Quinn because he does better on YouTube or something.
They said that on the air?
Oh yeah.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, he was defending his decision not to. I think there was something like Colin was due in or something, and they ended up getting like a wrestler in or something. And Sam was talking about it, and he was defending it, saying that this guy, when we do a show with like a UFC or a wrestler on it, we get like hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. When it's someone like Colin or something, we don't get very much. So he was like basically like saying that those sort of figures are influencing the guest decisions. But I mean, guest wise, I'm sure you'll put it in your own words, but for me it's all about indulgences, and I think that they both just at the moment they like to satisfy their indulgences, they like to satisfy their interests, and if they're interested in something, their hobbies, their first priority is to think, okay, I want to see this person regardless of how my audience feel about it.
They're abusing the fact that they have access to a booker and all that. They're like abusing it for their own satisfaction. And you want to know what's like the saddest part about this, about how they're not doing the thing that they made so big, is that look at who Joe Rogan credits. And now we're talking about the biggest podcast. Maybe not some of these are the biggest podcasts, but look who Joe Rogan credits as his inspiration. Mark Maron, I think, is even mentioned being inspired. Bob, what's his name? Bobby Lee. Chris Hardwick has mentioned being inspired by his visits to O&A. Kevin Smith. These are guys with like titanic podcasts. Fucking some of the biggest ones. You go to like, what's the number one podcast on any like podcast aggregator thing? It's those. O&A and their show, and people want to say like Howard is the most influential in radio, but O&A has basically set the tone for some of the biggest podcasts in this first generation of them, and all of them have one thing in common, is that they decided to not do a strict interview. They decided to do a hang that could be funny, it could be serious, could be whatever. They just said, I'm going to be like O&A, like when I went in there, and I'm just going to bring somebody in here and just hang out with them. And the fucking Godfather himself, the one who, both of them, the ones who created that and who have set the tone for fucking every podcast out there, refuse to do their own format. It's sad, man. It's
sad because it was so easy to become like, you can't tell me that if Opie's managing to squeeze a bit of money on his show to get, you know, Sherrod and people in, like whether it's $750 a pop or anything like that, then you can't tell me that, okay, they're giving Jim and Sam the show, the big morning show on Faction Talk. I'm pretty sure they could have negotiated something to say, can we have a little bit in our kitty to just, if we want to bring in regular comedians, just to keep it similar to what O&A was like. And they could have just made a seamless transition into what O&A was like. Maybe they think that O&A was dated, but I don't necessarily think so. And you can't, and like you just said there, with how podcasting's going now, and that's their biggest rival is podcasts. With how podcast is going, nearly every comedy podcast out there, or even any successful podcast out there, they're doing the O&A format. So you can't tell me that the old format of O&A is dead, or that it's that it's it was like dying or anything, because everyone's doing that, and it's people still want that, clearly, because these podcasts are doing crazy numbers.
Yeah, and then those podcasts, they influence smaller ones that are just getting started, and then those guys start rising up and becoming that. So it's like it's almost like people don't really realize O&A is it's kind of like those blues artists that all the rock musicians were inspired by, but you don't really hear about the blues artists, like you just hear about the rock guys. But O&A is that sort of foundation, the unspoken foundation. And it's also kind of funny because you go back to what you said about the YouTube views and caring about that and all that. It really shouldn't matter all that much, because when people go and they click, obviously they're clicking for the name, but they're not going to subscribe because of the name. They're going to subscribe because they saw something with that person who they wanted to find an interview with that was so different than the other like 4 or 5 interviews they have open in tabs for that person. And like for them to just do this stiff cookie cutter bread and butter interview, they've taken all of those views and that opportunity and just squandered it. People aren't going to care. They're not going to stay and try to click other interviews. They're just going to go watch the next interview with the person they want to see.
No, absolutely, exactly that. Meandering into because I think a lot of the interview stuff, I think Jim's a very passive person in the show. I think that he doesn't really take the reins. He turns up and he does his best as the show's happening, but I'm pretty sure, like, historically he's always been a passive kind of like passenger along the O&A ride, really. And I think that as much as we might think Sam's a bit of a sidekick, I think that with the background stuff and the prep and the direction, I think the direction of the show is very Sam orientated. I think that he probably has a much bigger say on how the show operates in a sense of it being this regimented, guest orientated, with the first hour dedicated to, and I think it's very much that Jim's probably almost even oblivious to the fact that this is kind of the direction the show's taken in a kind of very like underground way. So on to the next one. Is Sam Roberts a good fit for Jim? And if so, or if not, why?
I think Sam he still has the potential to be a great one. He completely gets Jim. He knows what Jim's humor is. He's not surprised by it. And by being so familiar with it, he can help to set him up. But something seemed to happen where I honestly think it's Jim, and it's kind of Jim's doing, that Sam isn't a great straight man for him anymore. Because, again, like, Jim has switched spots so many times. It's like sometimes Jim plays the lead in the interview. He's the one asking all the questions. Sometimes Jim, like for a couple months, wants to sit in the bar chair. Sometimes he wants to come sit in the console chair and run the show. And so Sam at this point is confused as fuck. He doesn't really know like what role he's supposed to be playing, because Jim just on a whim changes the options. And Sam, I think, is one of his talents, I guess, is that he's a good interview, because his questions don't seem panicky. They don't seem like really strictly focused on weird celebrity fascination stuff. They're just very simple, and he kind of plays off the answer to go to the next question in this sort of way where it starts to form this conversation and gets the guest comfortable. How many times have we seen Jim ask some question that the guest was like just put off by? I can't even count them. There's one
big
really
examples, like the pattern one, obviously, like your wife, your former wife, your dead. How do you say it?
Yes, yes.
And obviously the one to that fucking guy whose wife just, was it his wife or his mom just died or something, and Oh, what
This
did
is
Jim?
recent.
Um,
Also, Gary Busey. I think Jim kind of like pissed Gary Busey off in this weird way. I could go back, like again, like I haven't listened in a year, but there really are so many times when the guest just seems kind of annoyed, and
I,
I honestly don't think Jim's trying to do it. I think he gets in this really, really weird, nervous, panicky state when
hmm.
he's doing interviews, and it's almost like he loses his self awareness, and he loses the ability to know what it would be like for the guest in their shoes to be asked the question that he's asking. He's so panicky. He just wants to make some great interview that TMZ is gonna clip. That he asks them questions, and they're just like, "Hey,
I'm
yeah,
so
like,
glad you said it like that, actually, because I've got the perfect clip, and I remember what it is now. I can't remember the actor's name, but it's an actor who, I think like
was
he was in the, he was on the show when. Pardon?
Was it David Duchovny?
No, no, no. But he was on the show, and like something like his wife's was murdered or something, or like he got ruled as a murder or something like that. And then Jim just brings it up without any tact whatsoever, and then the guy's just like, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I thought that was David Duchovny, but maybe not.
No, it's a guy like it's him, a Duchovny level kind of guy. I can't remember his name now, but I've never heard him before. But I know his face from like television and shit.
Right.
But, yeah, he's just like I don't want to talk about that. And it's where it's where like those Reddit memes of like so your dead wife go kind of thing.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's really unfortunate because I honestly think it's Jim's doing. I think, like you said, salary based, and the guy who is making more and was the first one to sign and was the one to choose his co-host. I think it just seems like he's in charge. I don't know if the contract itself says it, but it's definitely the feeling. So I cannot blame all of it on Sam. I honestly can't. However, I do think at the same time something seems to have happened with Sam where didn't take long, and I think like whatever seat he was sitting in, he was sitting in it so much, and he's like, this is O&A's seat. Like I gotta really respect this. I gotta know my place. And just he kept sitting, and finally he got there one day and he was like, oh, like my ass groove is right in place. Like this is my seat now. And all of a sudden he just starts trying to be the comedian.
Yeah.
Starts trying to be the second. And you could tell Jim was like thrown off by it.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it just kept happening. It was like it was a big change. I don't think that's gone away. I think he still is trying to be that guy, and it's just awful. It's awkward. He got too comfortable.
What do you think about Sam's like political leanings though? Because it seems to me that Jim plays the fence sitter a lot, and he's very either or. But like in one of the things I've noticed in doing, because I've done like hours and hours and hours of like just listening to just clips and clips like in preparation for this, and the one thing that's like really struck me is just the kind of like, and it's made me really, I've always never liked Sam, but it's made me really despise him to like new levels. And I think there was one specific one, and it was all the prep I was trying to do for the Louis C.K. thing about, you know, Jim throwing him on the bus kind of thing, and
I know what you're gonna say.
And there was a show where Jim, it was before you heard what Jim had to say about it, and Sam was out of the gates just fucking attacking Louis like crazy, like really, like, and it really struck me. And I was like,
Sam.
Yeah, I was like sitting there thinking, Sam, you've hung around Louis, and it sounded like Sam has never met the guy. It sounded like this is just some random guy, and I was sitting there waiting for Jim to go, look, Louis is a good friend. I'm not gonna, like, I know the situation, but I'm not gonna throw him under the bus. He's my friend. I would never do that to a friend. I would do the same with any of my other friends. I've got my own personal thoughts on it, but I would never publicly. But Sam set him up. Sam basically teared him up and got inside Jim's head to the point where Jim was like, well, I'm on the spot here, and I if I don't do what Sam's doing, I look like a fucking rape defender. And man, and Trump stuff, political stuff, going through all this material, and Sam, like, I mean, he's entitled to have any political opinion that he wants, but I just don't think it's very. And compare it to like old style Jim, who was outspoken. I mean, I've got a whole section in the documentary about Jim's anti-Islamic fucking rhetoric when he first started. Like, there's loads of clips of him like just fucking full-on right-wing kind of rhetoric that just you can't believe that that's coming out of Jim's mouth now.
Yep. The trend with Sam is he doesn't want to sincerely and just like unironically just be like a genuine person and say like straight out what his opinion is, because it's obviously very like John Oliver, anti-Trump, all that. So what he does, and it annoys the shit out of me, it's one of the reasons I just was like, fuck the first hour of this show. He does this thing where it's like really sarcastic, but it's very, very clearly stating what his opinion is. And then when he kind of gets pushed on it, he starts to let the sarcasm go a little bit. Like, for example, I think there was something where Trump said, it was like one of those big meetings. Trump was down in Puerto Rico or some country that had just had a hurricane, and he was giving a speech at one of those like Red Cross meeting halls or something.
Yeah.
And he said, he made some comment, and it was a political comment. And Sam was like, because that's what you do when you're down in Puerto Rico and everybody needs their supplies. You just kind of... I'm sorry, that's what it was. Trump started throwing paper towels to people. Like, he wanted to get them into the crowd, so he started throwing them. And Sam did that whole thing where it's like, yeah, that's smart. You know, you should really just pick the paper towels up and throw them around. And that's what a good president does. And it's like... But Sam, we kind of know your opinion. I mean, you obviously don't like the guy. Like, you kind of want to find something wrong with him in every situation. And I noticed that it really started to become a reach, too. Where it was like, he would try to cover it as if it's so obviously wrong that sarcasm is warranted in situation. There's just a lot of times when it was such a weirdly detailed fact about him, or weird sort of like, there's one time when he was drinking water the wrong way, and Sam just wanted to go on it for like half hour, 45 minutes. Like, dude, we know we can read between the lines. It becomes way less funny when you have to do it like that, but we know what your opinion is, that in your true head, and what you don't want to share on the air is like completely unfunny dislike and probably like really, really harsh feeling towards the guy, and hear him mask it. I don't know, man. You can just like smell like something.
Like if you hear like Nick Mullen do it and comes out like, I know Nick Mullen's probably a little leftist, but I've heard him like stray across the right a little on some things, and it's kind of like a bit of a grey area. But like when you hear him do it, you know that he's just coming from a point of like, he's just a sarcastic kind of ironic, everything's ironic and shit to him. So you kind of like,
right,
you know that like nothing's necessarily heartfelt. It's all just everything's ironic and everything's a joke. But Sam, you know that he's just using it as a veil to share his opinion on it. And in order to preach what he thinks, he uses this veil of sarcasm, and we used to like the sarcasm at a point, because the sarcasm was always about in-show related things. It was always about, you know, Sam was just an intern that would just be sarcastic about other interns, or about like the people on the show, or things the show talking about. Now he's using it to
Steve C fucks up, and Sam,
and it works like that.
That was when it was needed,
because he's a gossipy shithead who's like just being sarky and stuff. But like now he's using it. He thinks he's doing it intelligently, but like you said, it's this veil for like hiding his real beliefs. And I mean, even if I believe the same shit as him, I don't think I would like it. I think I would still think like, what are you doing? Just if you think like that, why are you hiding it behind this stupid facade? Like, just say it. Like, that would annoy me.
Yeah, that's just be like if Anthony went up there every day and said like, yeah, you know, like, we really should believe that two women can marry each other and men can be women. Like, but he did that. Imagine he did that just every single day without ever just saying like, fuck that shit. Like, this ain't how it used to be in 1970. Keith, play that old commercial for me. Like that kind of thing.
If it wasn't just him yelling and being like completely true to form.
Right, exactly. Like, let it out. He wants to hide it because he doesn't want to be seen. Again, it's sort of that weird balance thing. He doesn't want to be seen as like John Oliver tier, sort of just city liberal kind of guy.
I think we knocked that one out of the park. Yeah, Sam being a good fit. Finally, this is probably my favourite of the questions. Has Jim changed in any way as a broadcaster from his opening and Anti days? And if so, how? I mean, it's a leading question. I know these are all kind of leading questions because I kind of like, I'm trying to create a narrative in the documentary anyway, but...
yeah, and I kind of wasted a lot of what I was going with.
Step
like,
over
honestly,
the same ground, like, that's fine.
Yeah, if you take the answers of every question that I just answered and how many times it comes rooted back to Jim, the insecurity and all this, all of a sudden, like, I almost wonder if, like, back in the day, did Jim not think that it would matter if he didn't get re-signed? Or was he actually worried about it? I don't know. Because he just, like, left it all on the air. Like, he just threw everything out there.
I think he just trusted Opie and Anthony implicitly. I think, especially Opie, I think there was an idea in with all the staff that Opie... Not that he knew what he's doing, because obviously come contract time, they were all very panicked, but I think he just exuded this kind of, like, authority of, like, I've got you, you're under my wing, and don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. I think even Jim and Anthony, I think to a degree. I mean, Anthony let Opie take the lead on the contract discussions, and he complains about it now, but at the time, you know, it was Opie leading all those discussions, and I think that Jim was... I think that's the fundamental difference. I'm not to answer my own question here, but I think my personal opinion is that the fundamental difference is that there's no safety net anymore. There's no champion that's there that's protecting Jim, and all of the crazy shit he used to do. It's a very obvious, easy answer, but all the crazy shit he used to do now, there's the roof has been removed from his head now. So now, and if you think like upstairs lives fucking Scott Greenstein or whoever the fucking boss is now. The roof's been removed. Now he gets to see exactly what Jim's doing, and he's got to be tippy-toey, and he's got to, you know, he's gotten too big on the show now. He's too big a profile on that show. Before, he used to talk all the time about the fact that like that management don't even know that I'm here. They don't even care about me. Like they don't want me here, and like. Right. Especially when Jim spoke to Opie and was like, yeah, you can fire me, they can't, but you can fire me and stuff. And I think that Jim saw Opie as the authority, not management, so that when and because Opie was pro Jim doing all that crazy shit, he had this sense of comfort, and now Opie's not there.
Along for the ride. Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's a good point. That was probably the mental thing that was going into it. And again, like to go back to all the questions, the real-time balancing of all of his opinions. I also think that he still is hanging on to that hope. I mean, he started to talk about like suicide and stuff. Like I don't remember what was the impetus for it, but it had something to do with not getting a movie role or like just not being able to get roles anymore, getting older. And then I think it's just the reality is starting to set in that all that time going to those auditions and having the agent call him up for this and that and getting his hopes built up and getting cut out of everything, getting cut out of Amy Schumer's movie. Like,
oh yeah.
He just, I mean, then he was on Power, remember? And he just thought everything was finally going to be it. Like, finally going to just get him more and more parts, and like, finally I'm in, and I don't have to worry anymore. And it never happened. And so I think, like, with him holding on to that hope, the problem is with him, too, is that he always gets close enough to where he needs to still care. If Jim could finally hit the point where he's like, I'm never, ever going to do this, so I'm going to, like, get on this mic and say every fucking thing that I'm thinking. But that point has never come because Schumer gets him apart.
Yeah.
He gets in Power. He gets He's had a couple other weird roles. He's always almost there, and that
Mm.
causes him to be scared. There was one time, I'll send you this tweet, send you the link, where it was during the Sue Lightning stuff, and Jim had to kind of come out and like get his little pro-trans opinion out there, and it's like fine, whatever, but the whole point was funniness. Send it to you. I'll read it. Read what it says. He said, "Why can everyone stop pretending that getting caught with a trans girl is the same as being busted with anthrax? You like who you like, just own it." And it's like, to me, at the time, with the context of all the other stuff that was going on, the funny things, and it was just fucking, like, comedic. I mean, fucking Anthony Cumia is busted with a tranny. And I think Jim really just did that stuff because he wants to build up this public record where he can make sure that
Definitely.
everyone can look back in case he ever gets in trouble, and he can see that I said this about that. I said this about that. I don't think it's as sincere as it is calculated. There was around that time too, actually, when remember Chappelle got in trouble for the trans humor in his newest special, like his big comeback special.
Yeah. I remember that very
And
well.
I remember Jim mentioned on the air when they were talking about that he thought he might get in trouble too. It was around that time because he also had some trans stuff in his special. And so
Oh
like
my
that
god.
kind of thing to me is not Jim being sincere. It's Jim letting all of his funniness and genuineness and realness go so he can compensate for it's like preemptive damage control. And
Yeah.
if you take that mentality and apply it to so many different opinions he's given on the show that have just been boring and bland, vanilla, just constantly worried about being the next like trending Twitter, SJW torches and pitchforks guy. That's what it ruined him. Just ruined him. Combine it with always being so close to making it and not. And it's like Jim, like the Jim that we know, that it's still in there somewhere, but he has buried it so much with that fear of losing his whole like potential that he thinks he has,
Yeah.
that like it's just gone. Like that Jim we know is left in 2005 when he didn't give a fuck if he was gonna make it or not. Probably never thought he could.
It's like a typical case of like just being at war with your age, and like he's still
Yeah.
living in a world where he's still looking at the potential, and with every year that goes by that he doesn't make it, it's another year that it's one less year that he's got to fucking make it as well. So it's just like you are right in that there's got to be a wall at some point that he hits where he has to stop caring, where he's out of the entertainment business enough for him to stop caring. But it's like you said, it's being drip fed. He's being drip fed entertainment. He's being drip fed the industry just to keep him in there. Just when it seems like he's out, he'll get like a Vice fucking series for like 4 episodes, or he'll get fucking the podcast or something, and he gets a bit of heat around. Like he always seems to get heat around about the right times, and then in the lulls, one more thing will keep coming, and but he's, like you said, he's never quite there. Just on a final thing, I've wrote down a list of a list of guests, because I'm doing like this guest like a composition thing. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the guests. And then I've got Kendra Sunderland, Kirby Garbrandt, some wrestling girls, Asa Akira, Mary Jean, Lisa Ann, Roman Reigns, John Jones, Corby Covington, like just loads of examples of these, like just the types of guests that roll in, the type of guests that are there to fulfill their own desires, their own kind of like interests. Mary Jean, anything on Mary Jean? Because I do feel like Mary Jean she's like the embodiment of the problem with guests, because it's the one thing. It's like she's a friend of the show, in quotes, however you want to say that. But they've acknowledged plenty of times that most of the audience don't want her there. But it's this like, fuck you to the audience, that like, this is our show, this isn't your thing, this is our thing, and friends of the show, this is our show, and these are our friends of the show. You don't like it, don't listen to it, kind of attitude.
It's weird to me how it's gotten this far, because I'll be honest, like the first time she came on, I think it was right after the election, and they did that on the street interview. That isolated time, just alone, I kind of thought, like, I didn't mind it at all. I thought she was, a bimbo, and like she was just, I think she seemed drunk. Like, it was, to me, it was like not that bad. It was kind of funny. And the other time when she cried, it was like, and then remember she cried, and Jim and Sam were so caught up in their rage. Again, they're so stiff, they're so self-conscious. Neither of them go, like, give her a hug. Neither of them console her. They just sit there silently, like they don't know what to do. Like, it was, it was ridiculous. However, like, she's been on since those times. She's probably been on, I don't even know because I haven't listened, but I could see it in like their video uploads.
Yeah.
Gotta be on like 15, 20 times. It's only been 2 years.
I went through all the Twitter responses every, like, because I was gonna do more of a Mary. I've not really got around to doing a Mary Jean specific thing, which is probably going to be a bit of a regret. But I went through their Jim and Sam Twitter feed and tried to find all the times that they announced that Mary Jean was going to be on the show, and then just like took screenshots of like the responses and stuff. And it's insane. It's like as you'd expect. I'm not fucking telling you what you don't know, but like it's absolutely overwhelmingly negative, and it's just that they just kept coming at you with this thing.
Why? I just don't understand why that is. You bring up that point earlier about Opie not standing for it. I remember Opie and Jim's one of their last fights ever. It was actually after the DL Hughley one. Was Opie shutting Jim down on a porn star, and Jim was so like butthurt about it. And to me, it was so weird to hear this fight going on, and like me actually like, wow, Opie made the right decision. What the hell? It was crazy. And that kind of thing really set the tone, I guess, where, oh, well, we got rid of him. We don't have to do that now. Let's have all the porn stars. And it's like, no, Jim, like, that was one thing Opie was actually right about.
Yeah.
That we don't want to hear that. And, yeah, it was, I think he's kind of getting his own little, like, personal, it's almost like your mom always told you couldn't have cookies, and you just could not have cookies. And then you get to college, and you're like, I can buy all the cookies I want. And you just get become a fat fucking mess because you're just eating Chips Ahoy in your dorm every night, like by the tube.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, yeah.
Yeah. Sam, too. Sam's like, well, I finally got the opportunity to say I got a morning show on satellite radio. So I'm going to call up all these wrestlers who I've gotten these little bedroom interviews with, or backstage interviews with like a shitty mic, and I'm going to have them on my real show. And it's like, guys, you remember, who are you doing a show for? You're doing a show for all of the people that listen, and in sort of context of how they started to listen and why they listen? Or are you just fucking getting your own way that you've finally been waiting for? And it's selfish. It really comes down to being extremely selfish and just completely inconsiderate of the people who have held on and tried to listen. That's why I see Reddit and all those kind of places. Like, that's justified. And they might hate it, and they get all, stinky faced about it. And those guys, this, that. Those guys are like, they're right for about a lot of things. They're absolutely right. That you guys have used that show and your platform not to satisfy everyone who's stuck around for, what is it now, like, I mean, if you go back to WNEW, but 2004, it's been like almost 15 years. There's people who are still listening to that, and that's how, like, you repay them for that dedication. It's just do everything that you know they don't like, and they haven't liked since fucking 2004, and do it excessively, just because you always wanted to. It's like, fuck off. You deserve the shit that goes your way.
that's the soundbite that's definitely going in. But yeah, the especially like, and just this will be final before like I think we'll wrap it up because I've got plenty of audio. But the Sam, what I wanted to get onto with Sam is obviously this documentary is not about Sam Lake, but just on a side point, right. Like his interest and involvement in the WWE network, and just him using Jim and Sam as a vehicle to propel his other career, his more interesting career to him. And he's like, I think specifically Sam, Jim as well. I think Jim with the porn stars, and he's died down with the UFC stuff a little, but the porn stars especially, that's still good and going. But Sam with the WWE stuff, I think I think because he was never really a big part of the original show, he doesn't give a fuck about the old O&A listeners as much as Jim or any other guys do. So I think Sam sees a big opportunity here to elevate his status in the WWE network and to use the show to propel him and to put him in contact with and put him around the people that are going to get him over to the WWE network. And so I think for him specifically, I think there's a bigger fuck you to the audience than necessarily is with Jim. I think there is one with Jim, absolutely. I think he's always wanted porn stars on, and like you said, because Opie constantly would smack his hand and say no, you're not allowed it, and the minute Opie's gone, Jim's like you said perfectly, the college kid who can now have all the candy he wants. So that there is that, but I think Sam's is more insidious just by nature of the fact that he is knowingly using the show as like a jumping off point to get into wrestling, because he knows that the show can bring in wrestlers, he can get in with those wrestlers, get tight with them, and then the minute he gets on WWE Network, wrestling fans know his face, because wrestling fans have seen fucking Roman Reigns on Jim and Sam, they've seen fucking Mick Foley on Jim and Sam, so they're like, oh yeah, he's the interviewer for that guy. And I think that's kind of fucking disgusting to use and abuse fucking Opie and Anthony fans, because let's be honest, the Jim and Sam show, yeah, they're probably cultivating some of their own unique fans, but it's not a lot. The majority of Jim and Sam fans are leftovers from Opie and Anthony. I can't see that that's not true. That's got to be true.
Yeah. And what good is it having YouTube fans? He's talking about like what does best on YouTube, this and that. I mean, come on, how small is the ratio or the number of people who will find YouTube videos and end up buying a subscription? But you still got to buy a premium subscription? I don't even know. The Sirius XM to hear this show, and they only fucking listened to it because Sean Astin was on it. Or they found Joel Kinnaman or whatever.
Yeah.
And they clicked that, and it's like, it doesn't mean they want to hear that first hour where this Mr. Sarcastic and then Mr. well, the other side thinks this, and I get their point.
Mr. Fencer.
Yeah, and how many of those people stick around after realizing that that's what it is? I don't know.
Right, that's about it, I think. I've definitely got enough audio. I'm just going to stop recording.